All right, let's get this party started. So, hello everybody. This is my final PowerPoint presentation project on Francisco Goya's painting Saturn Devouring His Son. This will be an analysis of that painting presented by yours truly, Ryan Cantrell. So, before I got into any analysis or context, I thought that I would just show you an image of the painting itself. Keep this in the back of your mind, kind of run over it in your head and appreciate it. We will come back to this later. So, Francisco Goya is his life. Francisco Jose de Goya y Lucientes was born on the 30th of March, 1746, in the small town of Fuentetorres, Spain. His father was a painter, and from the ages of 14 to 18, Mr. Goya served as an apprentice under the painter Jose Luzon. Francisco Goya served the Spanish court later on in life from 1775 to 1792. In 1792, Goya contracted a very serious illness that rendered him mostly deaf for the remainder of his life. It was a very, very serious illness, almost cost him his life. Then he laid low for a while. Napoleon invaded Spain during what is known as the Peninsular War. And during that time, Goya mostly laid low. But after Napoleon was defeated in 1819, Goya retired to a villa he bought called the Quinta del Sordo, which means the deaf man's villa. Not named for Francisco Goya's lack of hearing, but rather the previous owner's lack of hearing, ironically enough. It was here that Goya painted a series of paintings known as the Black Paintings, which included Saturn devouring his son. Goya died in Bordeaux, France, in 1828, 9 years after moving to the Quinta del Sordo. The Black Paintings, this is a disturbing series of paintings that were painted directly on the walls of the Quinta del Sordo in a fresco style. Saturn devouring his son was one of the Black Paintings, and it was painted in the dining room, as well as, I believe, the painting on the top left was also painted in the dining room. So those two paintings were in the dining room of the Quinta del Sordo. So going to Saturn devouring his son specifically, I'd like to first talk about the lighting and the brushwork. So the lighting of the painting appears mostly flat, with perhaps a slight bias to the left. So it's mostly flat, but slightly off to the left, and it might sort of imply that it's as if the viewer, you looking at the painting, you had some sort of torch or lantern, and you just lit it, and you just started to shine a light into the darkness, and you see Saturn devouring his son. This is supported by the fact that Saturn's facial expression is slightly panicked. His eyebrows are high, his eyes are wide. He appears slightly perturbed by being discovered. Uh, Speaking, and this brushwork part comes close to the lighting. The loose brushwork seems to mimic how, if you've ever seen somebody around a campfire at nighttime or seen someone lit by candlelight, it kind of mimics how the images uh, tend to be less clearly delineated under low light and natural light conditions, um, similar to how the loose brushwork tends to show the sort of shifting and unstableness of light in that condition. And this adds to the disturbing atmosphere of the painting. The structure. So two triangles can be formed out of the figure of Saturn, as you can see on the painting. The lower triangle is a right triangle formed from Saturn's hip going down through his right thigh in an actual line, going out with an implied line outside of the frame, with the bottom leg of the painting being the ground line, or the bottom leg of the triangle, pardon me, and the third leg of the triangle being formed by from Saturn's perspective, the leftmost edge of the painting. The second triangle is formed with the 3 points of Saturn's hip, his left shoulder, from his perspective, and the rightmost tip of his hair from his perspective. Now, it is important to note here that despite these triangles existing, neither triangle is equilateral or isosceles. Both of these triangles are scalene. This gives the painting a very chaotic and off-balanced look. This is aided by the fact that one of the triangles is upside down, and is further aided by the fact that Saturn's positioning, if you'd actually try to mimic the way he's positioned, you would find it to be slightly unnatural. Now, it is not particularly hard to position yourself as Saturn is, but it does cause a slight stretch in your body in a way that you would not normally find pleasurable. So the way that he is currently positioned is not the way that a human would naturally just choose to position oneself. And this adds to the tension of the image. So we've analyzed the painting itself. Now I think it's time for some mythological context. So Saturn, in Greek he was known as Kronos, Saturn is the Roman name, was once the king of the Titans, who at the time were the gods of the world. But it was prophesied that one of his children would one day usurp him, just as one of his father was usurped by him. To prevent this, every time his wife Rhea bore a child, he would eat the child whole, very much unlike what we see in Goya's painting. Then one day, Rhea stole her son Zeus away from Kronos. Now, Zeus is the god of the sky, I'm sure you're familiar, but Kronos is less talked about. Kronos is the god of time, specifically time as a destructive force. Time is something that takes away, steals lives and crops and what have you. But regardless, Rhea stole Zeus away from Kronos to have him one day overthrow Kronos. Now, if the painting does in fact depict Saturn devouring his son, and Goya never named any of his black paintings, so this is just the interpretation that a lot of people have come up with. The son could either be Poseidon, god of the sea, or Hades, god of the dead, as he never got to eat Zeus. So putting all of this together, there's a lot of ways to interpret Saturn devouring his son by Francisco Goya. My interpretation is just one of many, and it's not necessarily right, but given the fact that Francisco Goya was in declining health during this time, he was getting old, he was still deaf, his health, was in a decline, as it often is for older folks, and he would die less than a decade later. I find the symbolism of the god of time to be, if it is in fact Hades that he's eating, to be savagely devouring the god of the dead. It might be a way for Goya to come to terms with his mortality and march bravely and a little bit more calmly into the eternal dark of death. These are my sources. Thank you very much.